Humna, welcome to the Attorney General's office. It's so good of you to come in. Tell me a bit about yourself.
So I am currently a second-year politics and international relations student right here at UCL. I was born and raised in Lahore in Pakistan, and last year was my first time in London, so I'm taking all of this in for the first time. Outside of that, I've been a parliamentary debater since 2018. I was in the Pakistan national debating team, so we've just grown accustomed to talking about legal, political issues, debating about them all the time. I teach schools across London debating skills. So I think all of the work that I do kind of like ties back to very similar questions, like how can we make democratic systems more inclusive and more meaningful for ordinary citizens.
Great. Well, I want to ask you about an aspect of that, about the rule of law. What's the rule of law mean to you?
I think it means a few things, but one, it's a very simple thing. It's the difference between power that's exercised fairly and power that's just exercised arbitrarily. So what that means is that, like, even when political systems change, governments change, laws have to remain the same and laws have to remain constant.
Yeah.
And it's not just that. I think it's the underpinning of public trust in government systems. So citizens have to believe that the laws apply as much to themselves as they apply to the leaders right in front of them. And that's really important because in Pakistan, we see all the time the consequences of fragile governance, of erosion of public trust. So for me, I think I like to think of the rule of law as being like oxygen, so it's invisible when it's working, but the absence of it can be quite suffocating.
Yeah.
So it's like this invisible guardrail that protects disagreement from tipping over into disorder.
I think you attended two recent events about the rule of law, one that took place in Cumberland Lodge, and then one that took place not far from here in the Foreign Office when we hosted the Venice Commission. What were your reflections on both those events?
I think they were fantastic. It was a really meaningful first step towards including younger people, and they both serve very different purposes. So the Magna Carta event was more about how historical documents still we use principles from all these documents back in history, and they still underpin our foundations today. But the Venice Commission was more about how we can use those principles, how current bodies like government ministries, non-profits, they all adapt these principles to modern challenges. So I think the reflection that we take from that is that even though history can give us principles, it is up to us to adapt them to new challenges, whether that's executive overreach, AI influence, whatever that is.
One of the things I'm really interested about is like where your generation and people who are younger than you are on the rule of law, what they understand about it, what kind of conceptions and misconceptions are. Can I ask you a bit about that, your views on that?
I think for me, off the top of my head, there's two things that are like big misconceptions. The first is that we often tend to view the rule of law as being this boring, inaccessible, jargonistic thing that's reserved for politicians and lawyers and judges. Yeah. But we often don't realize that it pertains to the most exciting things that we care about, like climate change. We care about the freedom to protest. We care about free speech and social media. It's literally about the things that underpin our daily lives. But also, secondly, I think we see those things as, we see the rule of law as being this unshakable, static force that has been carried forward since the inception of states themselves. Yeah. But we don't often realize that it has to be this dynamic thing that has to be continually reinterpreted, continually defended. And it's not just up to other people, but it's up to younger people to defend and reinterpret it.
And how do you think we get out and talk to young people about the rule of law? What's the kind of, what is it we need to do?
So what younger people need to do for...
And what does my generation need to do to get out to young people to talk about it? What does your generation need to do to get out and talk to your peers about it?
For you, I think it's more about just including younger people, not seeing them as passive recipients of your policies, but active deciders and active shapers of policy itself. But for younger people themselves, I think we tend to play a very passive role as well. So for us, it's understanding that we are the first responders and the first targets of a lot of policy changes, and then it's up to us to decide how they govern us, to hold our companies accountable, to push for greater transparency for every reform that you make.
What do you think the kind of practical things is that young people can do? Where should they be talking? What should they be talking about when it comes to the rule of law?
I think the first and the biggest thing that younger people can take the responsibility for is social media and rule of law on social media, because due to our pension as digital natives, we are often the first one to spot when things like misinformation happens, when there is algorithmic bias, when there's election interference. But I think we tend to take okay, something's happening, but that's not our problem to deal with. So recognizing, taking on a more watchdog role, so reporting, documenting these instances and pushing your local communities, okay, tell me how my data is being used. Tell me how are algorithms shaping the content that we see. But then I think the third thing, particularly for social media, is that younger people can bring legal debates into the tech space, because courts and parliaments are often very slow to respond to digital changes. So younger people can create podcasts, start social media campaigns, bring those conversations here. So then it's not just about us defending our rule of law, but making it relevant for other people as well.
That's brilliant and that's inspiring. But I've been asking you lots of questions. I'm the politician here. I'm used to being asked the questions. So have you got any kind of questions for me?
Yeah, I think my first question is, what do you think is your role, like as the Attorney General, in defending the rule of law?
Well, look, I kind of share a responsibility with all my colleagues in government that we all have an obligation to uphold the rule of law. We've all got to act lawfully. Yeah. My particular role is kind of making sure, as the government's chief legal advisor, that my colleagues have the legal advice to make them aware as to what's lawful and what's not unlawful. So actually, lawyers play a pretty kind of core role in the rule of law by providing advice.
But why do you think that's important to begin with? Like, why is the rule of law important? Why is it something that we need to defend and like uphold?
Yeah, well, look, one of the core rule of law principles is that nobody is above the law. And that principle means nothing if it applies to those we govern but not the government. And so nobody is above the law is a really core principle. I mean, why we have a rule of law system is, I think without it we have anarchy. And we have deep unhappiness. And when you have a kind of a set of rules that have got moral value to them, and when those rules are clear, and when those rules apply to everybody equally, and when you have independent judges to ensure those rules are being applied, then I think that is better for the happiness of the nation, it's better for the prosperity of the nation, and it's just basically fairer.
So, you talk a lot about how the absence of the rule of law can be disastrous, but if you have to apply those principles today, do you think the rule of law is being eroded in society?
Oh, well, I'm really lucky in this country. This country has got a really kind of long, proud tradition. I mean, the Cumberland Lodge was about the Magna Carta, so that's 800 years ago, over 800 years ago. I mean, admittedly, the rights then were for a very small number of privileged people, but over centuries, people in this country have fought for those rights to be enlarged, and we've got a country now that's got a proud tradition. That's not to be complacent. I think the world that we're in at the moment, there are clearly risks to the rule of law, both here and abroad. So I think that makes it all the more important to remind ourselves why the rule of law is so essential for all of us.
Just to as a conclusion for this conversation, what do you think that younger people like me and other people around me, what should we know about the rule of law?
I think the task is to explain it in the way that everybody understands, and that we realise it's our kind of common heritage and also our common rights, right, as people. These are rights that have been taken from governments in the past, and we need to hold on to them because they're our rights. They're the people's rights, the rights to live in a society with clear laws where nobody's above it. And I just want to get out there, ultimately to me this is about fair play. I think that's what we all want. We all want a fair crack at the whip. We all want clear rules. We all want, in the same way in sport, I think in government, we want fair play. And that's what I think we need to get out and remind people that's what it's all about.
Yeah, thank you so much. Those sound like really wonderful insights there. And I hope that the office also keeps engaging more younger people, because I do think that's a very first an important, meaningful step towards.
Yeah, well, I can promise you we will.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.